Hey guys, Jim here. Today I'm going to give you some tips and advice on how to prepare, take, and successfully pass your National Registry exam. So let's say that you've been studying for months and you know whatever workbook you've been studying front to back. And you're thinking to yourself, there's nothing they can throw at you that you won't know. So you walk into your testing center or you log in at home and take the test from there. You pull up your exam and you read the first question and you have no idea what the answer is. This happens quite a lot. And it's in moments like this that you try not to panic, because you might not know the first 15 questions of your test. The first reason for this is every registry exam will contain a certain number of pilot questions. A pilot question won't count against or for your grade. A way you can tell a pilot question from the rest of the pool of questions is a pilot question probably won't make any sense, or it'll ask you questions on information you've never even heard of. A pilot question can be written in two different ways. The first way is the question will be written in a way that makes sense, but none of the options will fit the question. So if you're looking at the question and it makes sense to you and you kind of know the answer, but when you look at the options, none of the options match up, it's most likely a pilot question. The second way is the question will be written in a way that doesn't make any sense. Because assuming that you studied your registry book front to back, you know that there's no question that they can throw at you that you won't know. So if there's a question that doesn't make any sense, and if you look at the options and none of the options make sense, it's most likely a pilot question. You may not know a question until you get to question 15. So don't panic just because you don't know the first 15 questions on your registry. I promise you it will get better. And you'll finally see a question that you know, and the test will start to get better. What you do in this situation is answer, flag, and move on. Try not to take more than 30 seconds per question. If you don't know the question in 30 seconds, answer it, flag it, and move on. If you're taking a ton of time on one question, then that will take precious and valuable time that you will need down the road on questions that require just a little bit more brain power. If you're asked a question and 2 of the 4 options could be correct, always go with the best possible choice. How many times have you ever heard from someone who just took their boards that their test was themed? So let's say they were taking their abdominal boards and they said they had a ton of questions on kidney. Or they were taking their SPI test and they had a ton of questions on temporal resolution. Or they were taking their echo boards and they had a ton of questions on non-compaction cardiomyopathy. The reason why these tests can be themed, meaning there's a lot of questions based on the same category, is because when that first question was introduced about temporal resolution or non-compaction cardiomyopathy or kidneys, chances are they got that question wrong. Now, we don't know if we got the question wrong or not because it's not going to tell us. If you answer a question incorrectly, the test will automatically know that you got that wrong, and the algorithm will change. And so you're going to get a lot of questions based on that one category. And let's say, heaven forbid, a student doesn't pass their boards for whatever reason. They had a stroke, they passed out, they had a heart attack. By the way, those have happened before. There's been times where people have tried to take their test and they've had a TIA or they had a heart attack or something, but they were able to complete their exam and leave, and then they just went straight to the hospital. And because of the underlying condition, they were so focused on that, taking their focus away from their test, they unfortunately didn't pass. And instead of dropping everything and going to the hospital right away, they decided to stay and finish their exam. Or if some odd reason they're unable to focus on the test because of construction outside, or they're hungry, or whatever reason, and this results in a fail, they'll leave the testing center or the hospital and realize there were a lot of questions based on the same category. And because they failed, they had to sign up and retake the exam. Then later they have time to evaluate how the test went. They'll think, wow, I had a ton of AVM or fistula questions on my vascular boards. So that's what I have to study for next time. If I just know my AVM and fistula questions, I'll be good next time. But that's not true, so don't get sucked into that trap. Here's how the test works. Every time you answer a question, whether it's right or wrong, or you don't answer at all, the whole test changes. So let's say you answer the question correctly. The next question after that will be just slightly a little harder. If you answer that correctly, the next question after that will be a little harder. If you answer that correctly, the question after that will be harder. If you keep answering questions correctly, the following question will always be harder, and it'll keep getting harder as long as you keep answering correctly until the question is so hard there's no way you're going to get it right. That's why no one ever gets a perfect score on these tests, because the questions keep getting harder and harder and harder until the question is so difficult, you have zero chance of getting it right. So if you notice that the questions are getting harder and harder and harder, that's a good sign, because that means you're answering questions correctly. Now let's say that you answer a question, but it's incorrect. Your next question will be similar to a previous question. This is how a themed test is started. Like we talked about earlier, the reason why people get these themed tests, like if you were taking the pediatric sonography boards and you were getting a lot of questions on hydrocephalus, some will say that they had a ton of kidney questions, or they had a ton of questions based on the brain, or they're taking their OBGYN boards and they're getting a lot of questions where they show a defect and they say which syndrome is associated with this defect. So like I said earlier, the test knows that you got that question wrong. So what you want to do is go back and evaluate that first question that kind of started that chain of themed questions. Now the cool thing about these National Registry boards is that they will sometimes throw you a bone. So let's say you're taking your fetal echocardiography boards, and let's say the question is saying what procedure is performed first or immediately following birth of a baby who has dextrotransposition of the great arteries. Let's say you mistakenly put the J-team procedure where they do the great artery switch, instead of putting the rash kind or the balloon septostomy procedure. Then maybe what will happen is that the 5th or 10th question down the road, a question will say, a patient gives birth to a baby who has dextrotransposition of the great arteries, and a doctor immediately performs a balloon atrial septostomy. What else can the doctor do to help the baby return to a pinkish hue? And the answer, of course, is give the baby prostaglandins to keep that PDA open to help perfuse the rest of the body. So that question is answering your previous question. And now you know in that previous question that J-teen is incorrect because a balloon atrial septostomy will be performed immediately following birth. Make sure you read all your questions carefully. Don't read too fast. Make sure when you read the question, you take a second to ponder the possible answer even before you look at your options. Then when you've decided what the possible answer is and it's still under 30 seconds, look at your options, and if you see your option or something close to it, go with it. If you can help it, try not to flag too many questions. If you were to flag the entire test, then the test would think you don't know anything and every question would be extremely difficult, so don't do that. Any question requiring you to click or drag and drop an X on, those are called hotspot questions. Those are weighted higher in points more than any other question. So no pressure, but you kind of have to get those questions right. If you click in the area not exactly on the spot that they're asking, but kind of close to it, or you put the X near or close to the area they're talking about, but not right on it, you might get some partial points. Now, if you've been studying for months for this test, do not study the day before your test, and especially don't study the morning of or the day of your test, because chances are you might confuse yourself when you actually sit for your boards. Do something relaxing. If you like to exercise or yoga or watch a movie, do that. If your test isn't first thing in the morning and you're taking it in the afternoon, do something fairly fun in the morning and stay positive, especially during your test. If you get the feeling as you're going through your test that things aren't going well, don't get frustrated, because chances are you might have enough questions to pass. With all that being said, if you still need further advice and tips, feel free to email, call, or text me at any time. My email address is ultrasoundboardreview@gmail.com, and my number is 435-922-1635. I'm always available to talk. If you want to chit-chat about your upcoming boards or you need last-minute advice, I work with students who have learning disabilities, who have test anxiety, so contact me and I will help you with whatever you need. I'm Jim with ultrasoundboardreview.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.